Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now, today with me, I have Paul Barron. He is the founder and CEO of the Wall Printer. Now, some people think about an entrepreneur as somebody who is just in it for the money. But you know what I really like about Paul is that he told me that he loves creating other business opportunities for other people. And that is the topic that we're going to talk a little bit about today, as well as hear a little bit about Paul's background and the work that he has done that has led him to where he is today. Now, just a little briefly on Paul. He had started off as a math teacher, but found that wasn't the direction for him ultimately. With a friend early on, he started or opened a sporting goods store. From experience in restringing tennis rackets, he knew that there was a market for providing sporting goods, and taking that and harnessing that experience, leveraging it, and moving it into the sporting goods world. He created an opportunity there and has since then been a part of or helped to grow and build multiple businesses over time. Came out of retirement several years back to investigate this opportunity to be in the wall printer, vertical printer business, and really through his wife, who encouraged him also to go ahead and run with it, that this is an opportunity that, Paul, I would love to hear more about as we get into the conversation. But wanted to ask you, as we start this off, if you could just briefly take us back and just give us that synopsis of how you got started as an entrepreneur.
Oh, thanks, Zach. Nice to see you and nice to be with your audience as well. Happy to go through the journey. Of course, I'm 71 years old. I say that not necessarily proudly, but it's just a fact of life, literally.
Yep.
And so there's been a few steps on this journey of mine. And so I don't have to go back to Paul was born at a very young age. And I don't think you or your audience has the time nor patience to go through it all with me. I know I don't need to relive every single moment of this, but I'm happy where I am today. And I am totally of the belief that you are today where you are because of where you were yesterday. I'm very fatalistic in that regard, not only by the virtue of the people that you meet along the way, those connections you make that can help you or hurt you, partnerships that you make, people, whether they be friends, family, or coworkers, or employers, employees, whatever, they're all important on the journey. For me, early on, you described, I always wanted to be a math teacher. Math was a subject I was very good at. I thought that was going to be what I'd do for the rest of my life. My parents were of the generation that, you find something stable, you stick with it. They were both with the companies and businesses that they were involved with, working for other people, but still they were there for 25, 35 years, without making any change, just growing with that. And they thought that should have been my path as well. Might have been if it wasn't for number one, my, I guess, pig-headedness, if you will, or strong will that I always thought of doing things a certain way and didn't really like a lot of direction. I kind of bucked the odds on numerous occasions in my childhood, and for good and for bad on various occasions. But when I started this business and I started teaching, which was my first job out of college, I loved teaching. What I found I didn't like, and this is kind of, I say this at this point in this conversation because it's really the foundation for everything that followed, is you learn what hats you like to wear and what hats you don't like to wear. I think that's really important. I don't care whether you're working for somebody or working for yourself. And however you find your passion, make sure you're doing something that leverages the best you can be, not whether it be for yourself, for your family, for your children, for your co-workers, for the business that you have, whether it's yours or somebody else's. Find the hats that you like to wear and that you wear well. Sometimes those aren't the same thing. It's nice when they are. So I always wanted that to be the goal, that I would be doing something I would really enjoy doing and be good at. I guess it's the old saying, Zach, that if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. So I felt that was possible. And so I loved teaching, but I didn't like all the administrative stuff. I didn't like dealing with the parents. I didn't like dealing with a lot of the record keeping. I just liked teaching. I love the students and I like teaching. But I had to deal with all this other stuff. Now, concurrent to all that, as you pointed out, I did put myself through college. Besides the good graces of my parents and their financial support, I did earn some extra spending money by stringing tennis rackets for the athletic department. I was a tennis player then, still am now, 50 plus years later. The body isn't the same, not as fast as I used to be, but I still play competitively. But
I'm sure you could still beat me. I've never played tennis. I've hardly ever played tennis in my life. So,
well, in that case, I sure hope I could, but then I never know. But in any case, I did string tennis rackets for the athletic department, enjoyed the activity, and I made some good money doing it. And so when I graduated college and I started my teaching career, I had a friend that it was a tennis partner, friend of mine who was out of work at the time. And I felt that there was a need in the college town where I graduated, and remained in that area to work. We got together and I said, why don't we start a little tennis specialty sporting goods store? And so we did, and he was the one who was going to work it. I just invested in it a little bit and invested a little bit of my time and talent and in the tennis stringing, and he brought other skills to the table dealing with customers, and we expanded into sneakers and clothing and other aspects of a sporting goods store. And the store did well, and it grew. And it grew to second store and a third store. By the time I was in my third year of teaching and I had to make a decision, I guess the old Yogi Berra expression, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. And so the school said, this was my tenure year. They said, Paul, we really like what you're doing in the classroom. They also recognized the fact that I didn't like a lot of the other aspects of administrative life of teaching, but they liked what I was doing in the classroom. And they said, this is your year that we can offer you tenure. I go, but we also know you have these outside interests in your business. I think you have to make a decision. And I'm glad they presented me with that choice, because I made the choice and I decided to go into the business world. And so I gave up teaching in my third year doing that, went into the tennis store, grew it, as I said, with my partner. To the point that somebody else, a family friend, recognized what I was doing and asked me to come work for them. This began the pattern that really went through about the next 20 or 30 years of my life, where I would get to a point with something that I kind of knew what I knew, but then I also found out what I didn't know. And in order to get that additional learning of a business or of sales, marketing, financial, legal, whatever it was, customer relations, vendor relations, all the types of things that accompany a business, I realized that in order to do that, sometimes I have to find a different path, a different company. And so I went to work for this other company. And it was a jewelry manufacturing company. Learned a lot of different skills. I sold my interest in my tennis shops to my partner. And I went on to work for this other company as an employee. I did very well for them for a couple of years. They gave me, I was still in my 20s. They gave me a great Christmas bonus one year, which I thought was very nice. But my mother actually was the bookkeeper for the company. And so she knew that the owners of the company took a bonus as well from the sales efforts that I had brought to the company, a considerable more than what I got, which they deserved. It was their business. And so, but I went into the owner of the company and I said, look, I really appreciate the bonus I got this year. You know, salary is great. I'm enjoying it. I go, but I think I deserve more. He told me something which has carried through to me to this day. He looked me in the eye and he said, Paul, you're doing a great job for the business. I will tell you this, that when you work for me, I'll make sure that you get paid more than anybody else will pay you. But you will never earn what you think you're worth if you're not working for yourself. And it's not your business, where you're taking the risks, you're taking the responsibilities. And I took that to heart. I told him I greatly appreciated the opportunity he gave me these couple of years, and I turned in my resignation. And I went to work for a competitor who allowed me to work for half the time and make twice the money, because it allowed me to do only what I really enjoyed doing, which was the sales, customer relations, customer support, as opposed to the job I was just leaving, which 2 weeks out of the month, I was doing sales. The other 2 weeks, I was doing a lot of the factory, overseeing orders, management, inventory, ordering suppliers, things like that, activities that I really didn't enjoy that much. I just liked the customer relations. And so this new job, working for a competitor, allowed me just to sell, just to travel 2 weeks out of the month. And the other 2 weeks, I basically had off. And so it was so once again, I'm still in my 20s or so. And now I was making some good money. And another friend of mine who I play tennis with, he was in the college bar business, and he wanted to be in the restaurant business. He
Sure.
wanted to sell out his interest in this college bar and open a upscale seafood steakhouse. Now, I caution anybody in your audience, like I do, that eats out a lot. There's a lot of I don't know. It's the old Plato's Republic. It was a book that I enjoyed in college in philosophy class. Socrates was told by Plato that he was the wisest man in the world. And he said, no, that can't be. There are doctors, there are politicians, there are lawyers. These people are much smarter than I am. And then as he spoke to them, he found out that they were talking about all sorts of things that had nothing to do with their professions. The doctor, for example, to put it in context of what I'm describing here, the doctor said, I could be a restaurateur. I could do this. And he knew nothing about that business. And so, I know what I don't know. A lot of people are not willing to make that leap and suggest that there are things that they would be better off if they allowed somebody with more knowledge to take over. So my friend was in the restaurant business. I ate out a lot for those couple of years that I was working as this traveling salesperson, basically 5 days a week, 5 different cities, entertaining clients. And everybody that eats out thinks they can be in the restaurant business. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I was smart enough to be enamored by the business, but still align myself with somebody who really knew what they were talking about. And so we spent a year together, probably one of the best years of my life. As I mentioned earlier, he was a friend through tennis. We played tennis every morning. We went out for lunch someplace in the afternoon to talk about a different restaurant, a different menu, to find out whether or not we could get along together as partners in a business that I knew really nothing about. I was in it for the investment and for the real estate, really. He was the food guy and beverage guy. And so we would go out for lunch, then we'd go play tennis in the afternoon, and then we'd go out for dinner. We did this for a full year. Went out for lunch and dinner every night, played tennis twice a day. It's probably in the best shape of my life, even though I was eating very well. But at the end of the year, we decided, yes, we could be in business together. We decided through that year what kind of a restaurant we wanted, what kind of a menu we wanted it to be, where we wanted it to be, and we moved forward. Fast forward now 12 years. That restaurant we founded in 1979 when I was 28 years old. Is still open today, 44 years later. I sold out in 12 years in that business to my partner, who then sold out a few years later. But the restaurant is still open with the same menu we created in a small town, Montgomery, New York. It was a nice upscale seafood steakhouse, still is today. Took my wife there for the first time last year. And very, very proud of that accomplishment. And then, but I had moved to Florida, followed my parents who retired in this time period. Now I'm talking about mid 80s or so, late 80s. And there I was in Florida, still owning a successful restaurant business. I was in the process of selling to my partner and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I basically moved to Florida to be near my parents and play tennis every day. But I was still very young. And so I decided to open up another restaurant to basically copy the restaurant in New York that was very successful for 12 years. 1 year later, we fast forward the life of Paul Barron. I lost in 1 year what I made in 12 years in New York. That's what I call a learning experience. I don't like to use the word failure, but it was a learning experience in various aspects of that, not only market study of the market that was there, but also the partnerships that I found to invest in my restaurant had a different objective than I did. And so knowing who you're getting in bed with is important. So that was, again, another learning experience. But then I regrouped and I went back to my roots of math, actually, and I founded a little software company. And that software company became very successful. Sold that company a couple of years later. And then during that time, I became what was called, I became known as a communications consultant at that point. And people in the telephone business and call centers and things were calling upon me for different opportunities. And one company hired me to take a product that they had that was a communications piece of hardware and bring it to market. It was just coming out of the development cycle. And it was a very interesting product. I went to work for them, did very well for them for a year, introducing their product to market, landed some big accounts. And one of my competitors was a Russian company that basically had the same product we had, but they had a lot more, whereas we had something that dealt with communications. They not only had the same products and solutions, but they had other things in audio and video, just like the video we have here on Zoom today. They were actually the first video that was used for Skype software that I licensed. Nice. I licensed to Microsoft. They dealt with MP3 technology for playing music clips, which I licensed to Apple. For their devices, their iPads and iPods and iPhones. Any music clip you hear was this technology. The chips that sit on your cell phones for GPS to be able to locate you. The software that sits on those GPS chips was technology developed by this company, and I licensed to Samsung. And so that was a very successful gig that lasted about 12 years, brings me through from through about the year 2000. And the reason I worked for that Russian company was they had approached me. We always went to the same trade shows. We spoke to the same audiences, and afterwards we'd be what you'd know what's called frenemies. We'd go out for a drink afterwards, and boy, those boys could drink vodka. And we'd sit there and have a couple of cocktails, and eventually the conversation came around to, hey, Paul, how come you landed that account with Motorola? We know that we all know our technology is so much better than yours, but you were able to land that deal, and we weren't. And I looked at them and again, this is no reflection on current day politics for your audience. The Russian people, wonderful people. Forget the politics aside. And again, we're going back 20 years now, 15 years. But still these wonderful people. And we sat across the table from one another, and I looked them in the eye, and very frankly, I said to them, the only difference is you're Russian and I'm not. And what I meant by that is that there's just cultural differences in the way you talk, in mannerisms and speech. And American companies wanted to deal with somebody who spoke their language, to put it very simply. And so even though their technology might have been better, I was able to communicate the value of the technology of my company better than they were of theirs. And so I was able to land deals. So they made me the proverbial offer I couldn't refuse, just like what happened earlier in my career that I described. And I went to work for this company and worked for them for 10 years, from 2000 to about 2010, when I basically did all I could for them. But now I developed a new reputation, somebody who could take a foreign company's products and articulate it to the American audience. And so from there became a string of products, and I was approached by or I found the products and approached them to see what they were doing in the United States, typically products that I hadn't seen here. And it could be technology, it could have been a service. There was a Chinese headband headphone for children. There was a very innovative baby bottle that was manufactured in Austria, a self-service dog wash machine manufactured in Australia, a media technology board for communications in the internet technologies that was manufactured in Israel. And I took all these products and helped them find their customers, find their high-value targets, vendors, strategic relationships, whatever they needed to grow their market here in the United States. But all throughout this, I was a hired gun. Once again, longing for the control and the ownership that I liked in the businesses that I had myself. Even the ones that maybe weren't that successful, I still enjoyed the independence that they offered.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And I was willing to take the risk. I didn't have the I'd like to say, the good fortune of children. My wife and I, married 30 years now, who came along during this ride. We didn't have children. Our children are the four-legged variety. We weren't blessed with children. So we didn't have that responsibility, so to speak. Although my dogs take up perhaps sometimes more responsibility, because even though they don't ask for the car keys, they're never going to leave the house. So with that said, I was able to take risks along the way, to put it simply. And so every once in a while, I would stop working and I would look for something, and sometimes find something, sometimes not, and go with it or not. So I was fully retired about 4 years ago, but I was always searching. And so I found this. I was actually approached by a German company once again, who had this vertical printing machine that I had never seen or heard about before. I kind of think of myself as fairly normal. Some people will argue that point, but I think of myself as normal, at least from a consumer perspective, Zach, in that if I see something I like and it has value to me and it actually solves a problem, anybody out there looking to get involved with a business, whether it be software development, hardware, a service, if you're not coming up with a solution to a problem, don't bother. You need to be able to solve something and present to fill a gap in the marketplace.
Right.
And that is also something I learned along the way. Don't just create a solution where no problem exists. So you look for things that have value, that have a place and a very real need. And so this vertical printing machine I thought was really cool. Never saw anything like it. They once again wanted me to be a hired gun and represent them in the United States to market their machine that would print any digital image on any wall, indoors or outdoors. I thought that was pretty cool. There aren't many ways to put artwork on wall. You have a framed picture, you hire a graffiti or a real artist to paint a picture on a wall, or you get a vinyl sticker or something and slap it up against a wall. And all of these things had some limitations. Artists are expensive and take a lot of time. Vinyl stickers can't go on a lot of surfaces. And anyway, I found it interesting. But we couldn't make the deal because I wanted to buy the company after I saw the product, and there was no opportunity for me to do that and take an equity or take any equity position. So I said, no, thank you. I'm not interested in being a commission salesperson. But when I hung up the phone, I then said to my wife, I said, who I invariably at this point in my discovery will yell to another room in my home, and I'll say, hey, Maureen, come take a look at this. Well, usually, Zach, rather than coming into my home office and seeing what I'm talking about, she usually goes and cuts up the credit cards and hides my bank account from me because she goes, here we go again. Paul's going to invest in something nuts. So this time she took a look at it and said, that's pretty cool. Let's find out more about it. So I did my homework. I found out that there were only literally a handful, 5 companies in the world that made this type of machine. None of them were in North or South America. They were all confined to the one German company, a couple in China, one in Australia, one in India. And they all had some limitations of some sort or another, except for one Chinese company that was the originator of the technology. So I started the courtship with them. And I said, what are you doing in North America? Would you like representation first? And then I led that into, well, I'm not interested in just being a rep. I want to actually buy the product and buy the company. And so we started our dance. And sure enough, now I co-own patents with the Chinese manufacturer, which is very unusual for an American company because we made enhancements to the product with my input and that of my engineering staff. I own the entire Western Hemisphere for this product, still manufactured in China, except for the inks, which I manufacture here in the United States for the printers. And we're in business 3 years now in the United States. We've grown to about creating business opportunities for over 100 businesses today. We sell about one to two new businesses every week now. We sell, we're not a franchise. We sell the machines, support the machines, put people in business in their local communities, counties, states, neighborhoods, whatever, to be able to provide wall printing services to restaurants, schools, homes, residential apartments, event spaces, hospitals, medical offices, anyone that needs art on a wall, indoors, outdoors. And that's what we're doing. We're
absolutely,
as you pointed out very early on in your introduction, which I appreciated. It's all about creating business opportunities for other people. Because if I can create a business opportunity and make somebody else successful, then I will be successful and my employees will be successful. And so that's where we are. And we're doing well. Our customers are happy. We're getting good rave reviews, and we provide everything a company needs. And but more important than anything, we provide the independence for somebody who either wants a startup or maybe is in a business like painting or muralist or interior decoration or graphics arts, who sees this as something else to provide their existing customer base. But it's also a startup opportunity for people.
It's quite the journey that you've had, Paul. And
I'll shut up and let you ask me questions.
No worries. I really appreciate that. It's quite the journey that you've had. And like you said, with that quote from Yogi Berra, when you have a fork and you encounter a fork in the road, take it. So it's clear that you have taken that path that you had laid out in front of you just a little bit differently than the original path that you had intended to go on. As you had mentioned, your parents would have normally wanted to see you following that steady, secure job, but through your journey now, you've been able to create opportunities for others, not just in the restaurant industry with that example of the restaurant that still exists today, through the learning experience of a restaurant that didn't continue on, but also was able to make informed relationships with people throughout this period of decades that you've been able to transition into different capacities with different industries, different markets, even internationally, which has
And that's
allowed you to be where you're at today.
Yeah, and Zach, that's really the headline here. The
Yeah.
relationships you make with people. Again, old sayings. I go back to them. They're trite, but
Yep.
usually somebody said something better than I could at some point or another. And so
Sure.
they say be nice to the people on the way up because they're the same people you're going to see on the way down.
Yep.
That description that I shared with you and your audience. This wasn't a trajectory. It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't a one-way trip. There were a lot of ups and downs. There were a lot of points at which I was borrowing from friends and family who had the confidence in me when sometimes I didn't have the confidence in me. Fortunately, those times were few and far between. For the most part, I felt that I would succeed once I got back on track or found another track to be on. And there were people, though, all along the way that were there for me. And so I never could have done it by myself, nor would I have wanted to, because you also learn from everybody. There's no conversation you walk away from where you know less than when you started. So you hope that the interaction, provides you and the other parties. Today, I do a lot of give back to local university here in North Carolina. In Wilmington, North Carolina, where I live, there's a very nice, large university. I sit on the advisory board for their entrepreneurship school and the School of Business, and I mentor businesses and school faculty, community members that are looking to get involved in a business, and at least with the hats that I wear well, which I think is customer relationship, sales, and marketing. Other people take on, the legal, the financial, social media, those types of things that I don't do, but
no, absolutely. And like you said, business is often not a unidirectional path, and really just in life in general, as we continue to grow in age and mature and develop over time, we're going to have ups and downs and challenges in between, but the relationships that we form are of significant value in our lives. And if we can develop those rapport and trust with others, and they can see that we have that vision, or they can put their trust and confidence in us even at times when we don't have it, it allows us to continue to grow and build something that we wouldn't have otherwise. So I wanted to ask, in regards to newer entrepreneurs, specifically those that really don't know where to start. One point you already made was, don't find a solution to a problem that doesn't already exist. If there's not a problem, then why are you finding a solution for it? But what would you advise somebody, just a couple of tips that you would give somebody that's looking to become an entrepreneur, or get into business? Because like you said, that location where you were working, you're not going to ever make the money that you would working for somebody else, or have that satisfaction necessarily that you would if you were to be doing it on your own, that you can gain in that independence of being an independent entrepreneur.
Well, I believe any opportunity you take, whether you work for somebody or you work for yourself, or you create a new business opportunity or create a product, it requires three basic elements: time, talent, and treasure, I call it. You have to have the time to think about it carefully, to devote the energy that it takes to determine whether or not this is something you want to do, something that needs to be done. Does it fill some kind of gap in the market? Does it fill some void in your own personal life? A lot of people are just are socially driven, or they have something that happened in their lives, either for good or for bad. It could be a medical misfortune or something, but something that acts as a pivot point that leads them in a certain direction. I'm working with a company now at the
Yep.
university that's involved with freezing embryos and bringing them back when the parents are ready to have birth, or to birth a child and stuff. And he
Yep.
created a new system to freeze these embryos. And so
Okay.
and then that's because of their circumstance, that they couldn't have a child at the time that they wanted one,
Hmm.
but they knew that in the future they would be able to. And
Right.
so sometimes things are driven by necessity and personal circumstances, but the time to do it, the talent then, and talent doesn't have to be yours.
Yep.
Another thing that somebody told me very early on, was what people are always asking me, well, what makes a good leader? What makes a good
Yep.
CEO? I'm flattered that people would ask me that, but at the same time, my answer is usually always the same. Because to be a good leader, or to be a good CEO of a company, or to found your own company, make sure that you're smart enough to hire the best people to do the jobs that are needed, but wise enough
Yeah.
to then back off and let them do it.
Yes.
And, people who
Right.
micromanage, like that doctor who thinks he could be a restaurateur,
Yep.
that's just not the case. I have people who deal with the social media, I have people who deal with the technical support, I have people who deal with the
Yep.
sales in my business. Sure, yes, I can cook a hamburger with the best of them, but I go out
Yep.
to eat sometimes. There's times that you just have to decide what's the best use of your time and your talent, and then there's your treasure.
Right.
Do you have the money to do what you want to do? And what I mean by that is, not necessarily to invest in a company like I ended up doing,
Yep.
at this point in my life, but all along the way, did you have the time, when I developed this software product that got me involved in the communications
Hmm.
arena, and I developed a little
Right.
software product. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, but I found somebody who was programmer, and I was willing to give up part of the company to him. We went in as
Yep.
partners together. And so you could find lots of ways to get from point A to point B. Sometimes it's giving
Right.
up equity in a company, sometimes it's borrowing money, sometimes it doesn't even need money.
Yep.
But still, that's a consideration that has to be weighed, because you have to feed your family, you have to eat,
Yeah.
you have to put gas in the car, perhaps, or plug it
Yeah.
in these days.
Right.
Whatever you have to do, there's still a cost involved in terms of getting you and making you feel good about yourself, and being able to
Yeah.
have your head clear to be able to perform the functions of this business that you want to become involved in or
Yep.
create. So all those factors, that your risk tolerance, the financial needs, the needs of talent, all of those things are things you have to surround yourself with, or assess,
Yep.
before jumping into something. And then, of
Right.
course, there's the original objective, which is, what are you trying to accomplish? What
Yes.
solution are you really bringing to market that is going to solve a very real problem that people are having, or that
Yep.
you're having? And that's if not the most important thing, at least something that has to be addressed early on, before spending your time and the time of others assessing
Right.
what the end result might be.
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, I appreciate that, and that makes sense. Now, one of the questions I like to ask all the guests that I interview is, if you were to be handed $1 million today with no strings attached, what would you do with that, and why?
Well, number one, pay off a lot of debt.
Sure.
A lot of people said to me, in fact, this was that first job I described, that jewelry job where
Yep.
I left it, and I said, I can't wait. I think it's just a light conversation one day. I said to him, "Boy, I can't wait to make my first million," because I kind of saw that path ahead of me. And I
Yeah.
said, "Can't." And this was back when $1 million meant something. Today, it doesn't mean
Yep.
so much. But I can't wait till I make my first million. And he said, forget about that, Paul. He says, this day and age, you don't want to make $1 million. You want to owe $1 million. And
Uh-huh.
he goes, because if you owe $1 million, then everybody makes sure that you can go to work, you can feed your family, you can live comfortably, so that you can pay them back.
Okay.
So your question, what would I do with $1 million? Yeah, I'd pay back some of the debt that I have.
Sure.
I very honestly, today, I would invest in my current business. That's my short
Yep.
answer. I'd
Okay.
buy inventory. I'd hire more people.
Yep.
I'd be able to accelerate the sales and the marketing that I'm doing with this business that I think is a winner. And
Yeah.
so I the expression, you eat your own dog food. I definitely, last year was 2 years. I don't know about how many people in your audience have IRAs or investments, but I don't know anybody who didn't lose 20 to 25% of their money over the last couple of years. In the market. I was no different. Yes, I'm very happy that I can say I had money in the market, but I lost money. Well, this year I took everything out and I put it into buying more wall printing machines and hiring more people in my business, because I think I can make more money with my own skills and my own environment here than I could by relying on somebody else's market decisions. So, that's not always the case. There's a risk involved with that, certainly, just like there's a risk with everything else. But if I had $1 million, again, my answer today is I'd invest it in this business. And then 3 to 5 years from now, when I sell my business, hopefully to my employees, because I don't have any children to leave this to, I hope my employees will want to take over this business. And if they do, it'll be theirs. And then I'll use whatever rest of that $1 million might be left over to play tennis and swim every day.
There you go. I like that response. Yes, investing in yourself, especially when it is something that you believe in and you know that you're able to continue to build upon and build success upon. So, like you said, you're already taking some of your investments that you've done in the market and bringing that back into the business so that you can work on building that at a rate that you feel more confident in as you continue to grow and build your business. Well, if our guests wanted to reach out to you, Paul, and to find out more about what you're doing or more about what a vertical wall printer is, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so, I really appreciate you, Zach, inviting me to talk with you and your audience. I don't do these things as sales pitches for the wall printer. If somebody does want to learn more about it, you can certainly go to the website, thewallprinter.com. There's 15 to 30 seconds on the website, tells you everything you need to know about what this industry is and what we offer. But we're happy to connect that way. There's a simple form to fill out so that we know who you are and where you are, and then we'll be happy to engage that way. But if somebody just wants to reach out to me, can connect personally. LinkedIn, again, not an advertisement for LinkedIn, but it's a very good professional network to find like-minded people or just to search the market for people who may be doing something interesting. And if anybody wants to find me, Paul Barron, it won't be hard, I'm sure. My whole life is spelled out there. I'm very transparent from my kindergarten report card to the present. So if you're a glutton for punishment and want to learn more about Paul Barron or connect with me, do it on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a conversation.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that, Paul. And I definitely would recommend people reach out. I think Paul definitely has a lot more than he even has had time to share today. So please do reach out. Well, I appreciate the time that you shared with me today. Thank you again.
Thank you, Zach.
Absolutely. I look forward to seeing what's to come with the wall printer. One question before we sign off. Behind you, there's an image on the wall. Was
That's
that
a wall
done
printer.
With a wall printer?
Yep, that's it. Nice. Yeah, I have my warehouse here is cinder block made of concrete, and this is my office. My staff wasn't nice enough to give me a window in my office like I gave to them, so I had to wall paint
Created
one.
your own.
But yeah, that's a 5 foot by 8 foot mural. Takes about 2 hours to print that. Has about $20 worth of ink in it.
I love that.
That's a wall print.
That's marvelous. Yeah. So that's for those that are not able to see that. If you're just listening to this, very nice image on the wall behind Paul. So really nice example of the product of your product that you're working with today. So thank you again for your time. You take care.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it.